Good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled to welcome you all to the Common Ground Country Fair and the MOFGA Public Policy Teach-In. Just what a beautiful day, what a beautiful weekend we've had, and we're so appreciative of everyone coming out. We might get some little background music from time to time from the train, or maybe parades going around, but we'll mesh that right in somehow. But my name is Heather Spalding. I'm Deputy Director of MOFGA. And MOFGA, for those of you who don't know, is the host of the Common Ground Country Fair. We have been here since 1971. Well, MOFGA took shape in 1971. The first fair happened on the Litchfield Fairgrounds, and then we were in Windsor, at the Windsor Fairgrounds for about 17 years, and then we've been here since 1998. So a lot of transitions have happened, and over the years we've been trying to create, the world that we really want to see and live in. We are really happy today to have a group of professionals for our public policy teach-in who have really dedicated a big portion of their lives, their professional lives, and personal lives, to helping create a more local and more organic and more socially just food and agriculture system. So much of the work that they've done is really reflected in what you're seeing as you walk around the fairgrounds today. And so we're really appreciative of everybody being here. Their work really aligns and complements MOFGA's mission, which is to transform our food and farming systems, empower people to feed their communities, and advocate for an organic future. This is MOFGA's 29th public policy teach-in at the fair. Our public policy committee has hosted this event since they started. Many of our committee members, including one of our panelists today, have been advising MOFGA on policy issues and developing our advocacy campaigns and priorities going way, way back. And we are just, you look around, what you see when you're walking around the fairgrounds today, we just realize that MOFGA is so much bigger than the sum of its parts. It's all, you can see it in Common Ground Country Fair. This happens because of volunteers. Mr. Robinson, who is somewhere around here in the back, who was the music teacher for my kids when they were in the Palermo school years ago, and John Boy and Alfred. So many people just step in and give so generously of their time and effort to make this incredible gathering happen. So I really want to be sure to thank all of the volunteers. I just wanted to provide a little context for what we're going to be talking about today. Each year our committee really looks at, tosses around a bunch of ideas, and we just think like, what would be the greatest, what would be the most relevant public policy teach-in topic for this year. We're recognizing that we are in extraordinary times right now, and we've got to find opportunities for us to come together and coordinate respectfully, and even if we disagree on topics, we can really learn from each other, and the only way we're going to make lasting progress is to do that. And we feel that in Maine, there are so many organizations that maybe don't have organic agriculture as their prime directive, but the work that they do is absolutely critical for organic agriculture to succeed. We know that, cross-organizational shared missions are a reality and a really important thing for us to explore and to nurture. So I wanted to just also share that on a personal level, I started thinking about this topic because before I've been working at MAFCA now for quite a long time, but before, in my prior life, before MAFCA, I worked at Greenpeace. I was there for 7 years down in DC and focusing a lot of my work on toxics, international waste trade, and companies and countries that were exporting waste and technologies and products that were not allowed here, and basically finding places to dump them or market them in less industrialized parts of the world. And so it's been a big part of my life. And when this past spring, in March, when there was a lawsuit that a jury verdict slapping Greenpeace with $660 million fine for alleged work against the Dakota Access Pipeline, I thought, oh my gosh, that's absolutely crushing. There was a webinar hosted afterwards by Greenpeace, and they said, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to reach out, we're going to organize, we're going to have organizations that care about our mission. Maybe they're not specifically environmental groups, but they care about our mission, and we're going to talk about shared opportunities and how we can work together to, continue our work and put up some resistance. So that was kind of planted a seed, and then we thought, well, we have so many groups in Maine who are working on, in partially or sometimes deeply on creating, really truly sustainable food and agriculture systems. Let's come together and explore how those other organizations are contributing to the food and agriculture system we all want to see. So we have 4 panelists today, and I'm going to introduce you to them briefly, give you a little background on them, and then each of them are going to have about 10 or 15 minutes to talk about what they're seeing and how we can, ensure that farmers in particular are not having to bear the brunt of demands for efficiency, and we feel that farmers are generally encouraged to engage in a race to the bottom, which Bill will talk about a lot. He's been working this concept into a lot of the work that he does with us and in the legislature, and we really feel that we can do more of the work, the beautiful work that you're seeing out there on the grounds, and incorporate that more broadly into everyday life. So I wanted to start by introducing Bill Kluker. Bill and I work together. We're very fortunate to have that opportunity. He is the public policy organizer at MAFCA. And in addition to excuse me. In addition to doing the work that he does in policy here at MAFCA, he serves as the House Chair of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee in the legislature. And he focuses a lot of his time on addressing PFAS, and MAFCA has been working on trying to address the crisis of PFAS for several years now. A lot of that organizing work is orchestrated by Bill. And again, Bill is the one who so eloquently stated that we really have to question this race to the bottom in our food and agriculture system. And then the next to Bill is Don Honig, who is our, as I mentioned, he is a longtime member of our Public Policy Committee. Don earned his bachelor degree from Bowdoin, and he's a veterinarian. He earned his veterinary degree from University of Pennsylvania. He has a career spanning over 4 decades, and he's worked in mixed animal practice. He spent time as a USDA veterinary medical officer. He was the state veterinarian, Maine state veterinarian, and state public health veterinarian for 17 years. He served as an AVMA Congressional Fellow in Senator Collins' D.C. office and taught at the Tufts School of Veterinary Medicine. And since retiring from Maine Department of Ag in 2012, he continues to offer veterinary consulting services in farm animal welfare and public health policy through MIM Consulting. And he was the president of the United States Animal Health Association from 2028 to 2029, and he's a lifetime member of the USAHA Board of Directors. And he served on several committees and councils for the American Veterinary Medical Association, including his current role as chair of the Poultry Work Group on Depopulation Panel, position he's held since 2017. And next to Dawn is Juana Rodriguez Vasquez. She is the executive director of Mano and Mano, which is a farm worker advocacy organization. They're based in Down East Maine, but they work with immigrant farm workers statewide, empowering them to thrive. And Juana has over a decade of experience working alongside migrant communities and farm workers. She first came to Maine over 20 years ago to participate in the wild blueberry harvest and joined Mano and Mano in 2014. She has worked as the program director of the Migrant Education Program and director of Rayitos del Sol Bilingual Childcare, and has both designed and facilitated programming in collaboration with community members to overcome barriers and access culturally relevant educational services. She is the recipient of the 2021 Marcia Lovell Award for her work at Rayitos del Sol, as well as the 2021 Francis Perkins Open Door Award and the 2015 Vida Rivera Jr. Award. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Women's Health Resource Library, Healthy Acadia, and Friends of the Millbridge Public Library. And then at the end of the table is Amy Winston. And Amy is the Senior Director of State Policy at Coastal Enterprises, Inc., which is a Maine-based community development financial institution, CDFI. And their mission is to build just, vibrant, and climate-resilient futures for people and communities in Maine and rural regions by integrating finance, business expertise, and policy solutions. Amy is on the Permanent Commission of the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations in Maine, and she's a member of Sodexo's Maine Course Local Purchasing Advisory Committee. She co-coordinates Maine's Food Policy Work Group, and she was appointed to the Maine Climate Council's Coastal and Marine Working Group to help shape recommendations regarding coastal economic diversification in the upcoming Climate Action Plan. And Amy leads policy initiatives supporting the organization's strategic objectives to expand economic opportunities, create good jobs, and support environmentally sustainable enterprises. So, little punctuation there. So thank you all to our absolutely wonderful panelists today. And I guess I will start off by maybe Bill, you could provide a little bit more context for this idea of how we can turn direction and move away from the race to the bottom in food and agriculture in Maine.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Heather. Appreciate that, all those introductions. The other piece of my biography there is that I've also been an organic farmer for the last 20 years or so. And when I'm in this state house and I am hearing from so many of the opponents of MAFGA's policies and MAFGA's advocacy, I often hear that, what farmers need is to create a cheap product that is easily accessible to all. And so much of the time when we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about an agriculture that's trying to create the cheapest possible product in as large a quantity as possible, and that will somehow be a successful agricultural system. And so oftentimes that expectation of a cheap product comes on the backs of the farmers and the farm workers who are producing that product. So particularly, I was speaking to the Environment and Natural Resources Committee in the State House about some of the protections that we currently have in the state of Maine around PFAS and pesticides. PFAS are colloquially known as forever chemicals. Roughly 14% of the pesticides that are used in the state of Maine have PFAS in them, according to the Board of Pesticide Control. And so who are the people who are the most harmed when those PFAS and those pesticides are being used? Of course, it's not serving the food community, the people, the consumers, but the ones who really walk home with it in their blood are the farmers and the farm workers, right? And this goes not just for PFAS, but for all of the pesticides, cheapest possible product and the most ubiquitous product. And so that is what I'm calling, it's this race to the bottom. Whoever gets the lowest common denominator the fastest is the winner and quote unquote the most profitable. And I think that that's not true, right? We need to create a system of agriculture where we expect the best for our farmers and farm workers, where we expect the best for our soil and water. In so many cases, these farmers they're heavily, farming is a very capital heavy industry. So you're spending your life's resources to pay for a piece of land that you're then expected to poison with pesticides or PFAS or whatever is the newest product that's supposed to get your vegetables out of the ground at the cheapest possible price point, right? And so you're paying for this land that you're simultaneously, or water that you're simultaneously poisoning, or it's affecting your own family. And that's what we've seen with PFAS across our state is the families, the farm families and the farm workers who have the highest level of exposure, because they're not just eating the food, but they're also drinking the water, they're also inhaling the dust, and they're applying the pesticides. And so this doesn't serve our community. And I think a little bit, before I pass it along, a little bit more on a bigger level, the federal level, when we look at this behemoth of a farm bill that was last passed in 2018, I think it's $458 billion spent to support the agricultural system that we say that is the best agricultural, the country says, or we spend our dollars reinforcing is the best system, but it's not the best system for the consumer. It's not the best system for the farmer, right? We simultaneously have to spend billions of dollars to keep people fed. So it's producing a cheap product that's not getting to the mouths of the people that need it. So I think even that one point disproves the idea that the cheapest possible product is the best. The creation of the cheapest possible product is the best use of our agricultural system. Best use of our agricultural system is one that produces a high quality product that's healthy for the land, soil, water, and healthy for the farmer and the farm workers. Thank you.
And that's amazing, and don't feel rushed. All of you can just wax poetic here. We've got time. That was amazing though.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bill. And I really appreciate being here. I've been coming to this fair for a long time, since it was at Windsor Fairgrounds. I first came with my kids, and then off and on for many years until now. And I was on a panel, I was on a couple of these panels over the past 20 years, I guess. And the one that I remember the most was in 2006. I was on a panel, I think it was a teaching panel, to talk about animal identification. And it was quite a hot topic at the time, and even more so because at a public meeting in Ellsworth in the spring of 2006, I was physically assaulted at a big public meeting. My colleague and I were assaulted by two demonstrators in skeleton costumes who came in and threw horse manure at us. They missed, we ducked, and they were never apprehended. So when Common Ground asked me to come and speak that fall in 2006, we had security here. The sheriff's department was here standing outside the tent. And it went off uneventfully, but it was such a high-profile issue that we needed security here. My point will follow on what Bill said. I believe in my career, I mean, I've been a veterinarian for 47 years now, I guess, which tells you kind of how old I am. But the primary emphasis in animal agriculture for many decades has been a push to improve efficiency, profitability, and affordability. And what that's resulted in for animals is more animals in less space, usually indoors. And these metrics were prioritized even over animal welfare and even over worker safety and well-being. In my mind, nothing exemplifies the race to the bottom with respect to animal welfare more than what's been done to the chicken over the past many decades. The most controversial practices and the ones that most negatively affect an animal's welfare are those that severely restrict the ability of livestock and poultry to exhibit normal behavior. That is, to stand up, turn around, and interact with other animals of the same species. These include so-called battery cages for hens. I'll talk a lot more about them in a minute. Gestation crates for pregnant sows in which sows cannot turn around for their entire gestation. And the gestation of a pig is 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours, 3 minutes, 3 seconds. That was drilled into us in veterinary school. And also veal stalls for calves, which prevent the calves from turning around. So they became very controversial issues, I would say, over the past 10, 20 years or so. And a battery cage is a prime example of the race to the bottom. Has anybody in here raised chickens? Raise your hands. Okay. So what does a chicken like to do? Peck? What's that? Wander, scratch, perch, interact with other birds. Battery cages usually house around 6 birds per cage. They have wire floors so the manure falls through. No place to perch, no place to scratch, no place to hide or lay eggs in privacy. So a lawyer, I worked with the big chicken farms over in Turner and Leeds and Winthrop for many, many years. And I got to know Jack DeCoster very well, had many, many meetings with him, spent thousands of hours literally over there and at flocks around the state. And at one point, he got in trouble with the Department of Labor and paid a big fine. And then we had a salmonella control program with him that he actually adhered to for many years. But he had a lawyer at one point from Iowa, a high-powered lawyer, come in, and really nice guy, enjoyed working with him. He said to me, what makes a chicken happy? And I thought, well, what I just listed to you, right? I mean, chickens are sentient beings. They experience fear, pain, and distress. And I can tell you that their physical and mental needs are not being in a cage where they have a space as big as this piece of paper on which to exist. A lawyer, so when he asked me that, I said, well, you know, they like to perch, they like to scratch, they like to interact with other birds, they like to be protected when they lay their eggs. So just imagine 6 hens in a cage, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 17 by 24. Now, there was a time when I first started working for the state in the mid-'80s when there were 7 or 8 hens per cage, same size cage, same size. So no opportunity to hide, no opportunity to perch. They got their feed from a little trough and they laid their eggs on wire and it rolled down into a trough and was carried away automatically by a bell. So animal activist groups, and I really do give them a lot of credit, and animal rights groups began to agitate for change 20 years or so ago. The pressure was most intense against battery cages, and Prop 12 in California was overwhelmingly passed in 2008, effectively banning battery cages in California. In 2015, the McDonald's Corporation became the first international corporation to commit to source all their eggs from cage-free suppliers by 2025, this year, 10 years. They achieved that goal 2 years ahead of time, according to what I can read on the internet, which is, you know, if you Google now, if you Google anything, the number one source that comes up is AI generated. Number one source, which is very disturbing to me. But so I scrolled down, read Bloomberg News, which I couldn't really get past a firewall, but the title said that they'd met that goal by 2023. I'm going to believe that. I might be the only person in the history of the Common Ground Fair to say something complimentary about McDonald's, but they did drive the rest of animal agriculture. they basically pushed many other fast food restaurant chains, restaurants, food suppliers, quick service restaurants. They all fell into line to source cage-free eggs, which has been hugely, so this is kind of a positive story. You know, we raced to the bottom to cram as many chickens in a cage as we could. And then the reaction to that was, well, the chickens they're not happy, right? They may be producing really well, but they're not happy birds. And it's wrong, really, to raise them like that. So what happened after 2015 was that the rest of the industry got in line. So 15 years ago, cage-free, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, which is a husbandry system that allows the birds to have more space. Cage-free represented only about 3% of U.S. production. Currently, it stands at about 50%. So 50% of U.S. production is cage-free now. What do I got here? I'm rolling.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
fine.
I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
So after California, a bunch of states got into line in phasing out battery cages. There are 10 as far as I can find out online again. Arizona, California, Colorado, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, Oregon, Rhode Island, Utah, and Washington. Maine never fell into line because we had one of the reasons was that the poultry industry in Turner, Leeds, and Winthrop employed a lot of people. And yes, he had certainly a lot of headbutting with the Department of Labor in the 90s. But with respect to what he was doing with the Department of Agriculture, he was adhering to what we wanted him to do, which was to control salmonella. And so I was not going to get on the bandwagon and start to push for banning battery cages. It wasn't me anyway. This would have been a public referendum, but we did not have a public referendum. So some of these states have or are in the process of banning gestation crates for pregnant sows and veal stall for calves. And in fact, even though we didn't have any sows housed in gestation stalls in Maine, and I've been to just about every pig farm for a long time in Maine that raised more than 10 or 20 sows, none of them used gestation crates. But the Maine legislature in 2009 voted to ban gestation crates for sows. So as I said, we used to have an extremely large presence of egg-laying hens in New England. Anybody who's ever driven over through Turner on Plains Road has seen the complexes over there. We had 4.5 million laying hens here in Maine, and all the surrounding breeding flocks, pullet houses, they were all over the state, all over that area, say within an hour or two of Turner. After declining in numbers the past 13 years, the last of those complexes ceased production in 2024. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, if you go into the grocery store right now and go to the egg case, it's probably one of the most confusing parts of the grocery store. And the reason is that there are so many labels on the egg cartons. You got white, you got brown, you got cage-free, you got free range, you got pasture-raised, you got organic. So right there, that's 6 labels that you can see in the grocery store. I went into Hannaford yesterday, and the cheapest eggs there were white, a dozen white eggs for $3.19. There were a dozen large brown eggs for $3.79. But you could get let me see now. You could get extra large brown eggs for $4.19. You could get Nature's Promise organic. This is a Hannaford brand, Nature's Promise organic cage-free for $3.99. So for 20 cents more a dozen, you could buy eggs from hens that were raised in cage-free environments where they have space to perch, nest, and interact with other birds and scratch. 20 cents more a dozen than conventional brown eggs, which to me, it's expensive. 10 years ago, eggs were $1.59 and $1.69 at Hannaford's for conventional eggs, and organic and cage-free were probably similar prices. So the price for conventional eggs have gone up. The other thing that comes into play is, what about the label? Who can you believe, right? It says cage-free. Well, whose definition is that? Well, there is a USDA definition for cage-free, and there's a USDA definition for free range. USDA, on the Agricultural Marketing Service website, free range is continuous access to the outdoors. Cage-free is able to roam vertically and horizontally in an indoor area, must have perches, scratch areas, and nests. There's no delineation of how big those perches have to be, how big the nests are, or how much of a scratch area. But the definition is there. If you want to think about a third-party organization that could actually go and audit beyond what the industry does on their own, there are several out there. There's American Humane Society, which I used to work for about 6 years after I retired. There's Certified Humane, and there's GAP, which is the certifying organization for Whole Foods. We only have one Whole Foods store here in Maine. So those organizations actually go in and do third-party auditing. If you want to look for their label, it's there, American Humane, Certified Humane, GAP. So if you want to step it up a little bit and actually look for a third-party organization to audit. Parting thoughts. My parting thought is, we've made it, another part of the race to the bottom has made it extremely difficult to find out where your food comes from. It's like going to Hannaford and look at the egg case. Okay, now in some cases you can. You might be in Jerry's, this is New Hampshire. There's some eggs, I think there's some hens in Maine too. Vital PR, Pasture Raised, I don't know where that is, but it might be on the carton. But most of the cartons in there, particularly the Hannaford brand or the just generic brand, they don't tell you. They just say white, dozen white eggs, dozen brown eggs. There's a code on the end. And if you want to find out where they are, with a little bit of effort, you can look at the code. I looked at one yesterday. It was from Costco. We bought 2 dozen eggs for $7.99. They were organic, pasture raised, and they were American Humane certified, $7.99. So that's $4 a dozen for certified eggs by American Humane. But you got to go on the end of the carton, and on the end of the carton tells you a lot. There's a Julian calendar date, which is the date the eggs were packaged, right at the farm. And there's I got 30 seconds. There's a Julian calendar date at the end, and there's a sell-by date. The sell-by date, if it's got a USDA shield on it, is 45 days from the Julian date. So the further out, it is from now. If you go to Hannaford now and it says October 20th, then they were packaged 15 days ago. The plant number is a whole other matter. If you can figure out the USDA's website, good for you. I couldn't yesterday. I tried to find out where those eggs came from, P1247, and I never found it. So I'm sure somebody who's young and smart out there will look this up and come up and tell me afterwards. Thank you. I'm done.
Thanks, John. That was great. Really appreciate, and yeah, definitely we're making some progress and have some challenges. So Juana, could you share a little bit about your experience working with Mano and Mano and the vision that you and your community has to help us turn around from this race to the bottom?
I don't know if you guys can hear me. You might have to pull it a little bit closer. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. So thank you for inviting me to be here. Like I mentioned, I'm the executive director for Mano and Mano, which is an organization based in Down East Maine. We work alongside, like Heather mentioned, immigrant farm workers and mostly the Latino community in that area. Those are the people who are harvesting, who are often producing and are fishing the foods that are on our table. And our work is really around supporting them, empowering them, and celebrating them as humans and welcoming them into the state of Maine. So I'm going to share a little bit about what is Mano and Mano, how we started, and what we're doing now to support farm workers, immigrants who are coming into our state. So Mano and Mano started back in 2005 as an organization. It was a result from the 1990s when there was a large influx of Latino farm workers who decided to migrate into a town in Down East Maine, Millbridge. They came specifically to work in the sea cucumber factories and then staying into harvest blueberries after that got done. Most of them stayed and called Millbridge or surrounding towns home. They stayed permanently. My family was one of them. We moved here working to do sea cucumber. Prior to that, we were a migrant family working across states, migrating every year across the coast, starting in Florida and then migrating to Michigan every year, doing a variety of crops in the way. So from there, Mano and Mano was funded in 2005. Like I mentioned, we do a variation of support services. We do direct services with community members, and then we also do grassroots community development, organizing, advocacy work. We work with what we would say like two groups of communities. We have a year-round community in the Millbridge area, Down East area, and then across the state, which is more supporting the migrant families who are staying in the state, doing a variety of work, and then a family immigrants who have settled in like the Down East area. Then we also do support seasonal migrant farm workers who are coming here every year, and that's either to do like blueberries more in Down East, but then also potatoes, apples, broccoli, and also seafood forestry, and then some tipping around wheat in the winter. So we have I would say like 5 different programs, Mano and Mano. I'm going to start with Access to Essential Services, which is a program which is open doors to community members. It's a program that supports families and farm workers to access services in the area. That could be like transportation to resources. It could be language support. It could be reading letters or supporting them to access any kind of government programs or any services in other nonprofits. Our access program was really what started Mano and Mano, as community members came into the area supporting each other as they were settling in schools, in other organizations, and in other institutions. That work still today is really strong to Mano and Mano. We do a lot of services throughout the year. During the migrant stream for blueberries, we serve probably around 2,000 farm workers who are coming in to support the blueberry industry in Down East Maine. There's various ways that we do that. One of them is we hold welcome resource centers or welcoming sites for them, where we just celebrate them, welcome them into the state of Maine, and support them with services, with food, with resources, connection to other programs that while they're here, and then clothing as well. The next program that we have is our migrant education program. Our migrant education program is a program that supports any migrant students and their families starting from birth up to the age of 21. Our migrant education program runs statewide. So we support students all across the state of Maine. We have staff who go into farm, into housing, meet with farm workers, meet with families, and support them in making sure that students are getting their education while they're here, and there's as much as less distractions while they're here, so that their education isn't disturbed. Last year, we served 363 migrant students across the state of Maine. That's calendar year, so January to December, with advocacy, with parent involvement, with tutoring, with the summer school that we host every year in Millbridge area, the Blueberry Harvest School, which is a school that's primarily focusing on supporting students families who are coming for the migrant season, blueberry migrant season in that area. These children are also supported throughout the school year. So if they're to ensure that they're accessing services and resources while they're here for education as well. Then we have one of our newest programs in education as well, which is Raitos de Sol Bilingual Childcare, which is a childcare who provides bilingual Spanish and English childcare for families in the Washington and Hancock areas. We also serve seasonal farm worker families when they're here, leaving spots available for their children while they're out in the fields harvesting food. But the childcare opened in 2021. It had a capacity of 12 children, and after a couple of years, we have now expanded to serve 65 children in 5 different classrooms. So that's been a huge impact in the communities and the families that we serve from Marion, Washington County. We want to ensure that workers who are coming here seasonally have a place for their children to stay while they are in the fields, which is often not reliable when they come here because of childcare shortages just across the state of Maine and everywhere. So that's one of the programs that is supporting that. We also have our advocacy program, which is a program to really support community voices. It builds leadership, confidence, support voices among the immigrant farm working community and also the year-round immigrant community in down East Mace. We host a variety of workshops. We do home visits, community meetings to support this, to exchange culture, and to educate folks, farm workers in the community about their rights. And about policy and what they can do to get involved. We recently launched Strongo Juntos statement that reaffirms what Mano and Mano was trying to do with policies that dehumanize or marginalize people, that we stand for fair wages, housing, healthcare, education, regardless of immigration status and regardless of who you are here in this country. So we support farm worker voices, we support community voices to start working to shift policy and to really work and towards like livable wage, to work around livable, more protective labor policies, housing supports, and shift the policy around what is happening across the state and the people who are putting the food on our table. I wanted to share a little bit of some of the things that are that we see that are happening that's connected back to what Bill was sharing about fair wages and labor protections. Here in Maine, farm workers still are not recognized as employees and they don't have the right to the state minimum wage. There's been work around that. So those are the folks who are in the fields producing harvesting work and are there long hours and often the ones that are being effective. So throughout the food production and harvesting, there's just advocacy around minimum wage compensation, but then also the factors that affect them as well, which is housing, and then education, health, children, childcare, all of the other factors that support people to be able to thrive. Immigration policy that protects those who are farming for our food, ensuring that they're not excluded because of their legal status, that they have access to healthcare, that they have access to basic services that they need without fear of something happening. Also investing in social supports like I mentioned, around childcare, around housing, around transportation, language access as well, legal access, and recognizing that that's all part of the food system infrastructure that we're here all talking about. I think the other is around community voice and ensuring that farm workers and immigrants, community members have a seat on the table where all of these decisions are being made about food labor, about housing policy, local development, that they are part of those conversations that are affecting them and their families and their children. I'm going to leave it. I think there's a lot of things that I could share about what we do. And I welcome you all to visit our website online to learn more about the work that we're doing. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Juana. Really appreciate that, and it's also been so great to work with you on the the advocacy front around farm worker justice. So we can talk more about that. So Amy, would you like to take it?
Hello. Is that an appropriate level to speak out? Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. As Heather said, I'm the Director of State Policy at Coastal Enterprises, or CEI, and CEI is a community development financial institution or community development bank. And we combine business advising and financing with public policy, and we really try to integrate each of those so that we can meet the needs of small businesses in Maine. So as I listen to each of you, everything is so resonant. I started out, I was trained as an ethnographer, and I worked in a very small town in Kentucky, and I saw them trying to diversify off of coal, and I decided I really wanted to be a practitioner and not an academic. And I had gone to school in Maine, and I came back to Maine to live. And as an economic development director in Lincoln County, really just started looking at what the human and natural resources were. I had been very rooted in just community sustainability in my research, and was really just going back to Denella Meadows and the limits of growth, and very concerned about the exhaustion and extraction of natural resources and the impact on local human populations that depended on those resources and on non-human populations. So when I got to working in Maine, I also really learned a lot in Kentucky about participatory community development, and I wound up landing at CEI, which hosted the county's development office. And I started meeting the farmers and the fishers there, and a lot of parents that were basically upset about what the school food was like. So I got very involved in Farm to School, and I saw a lot of the challenges that really relate back to the race to the bottom, and just listened to farmer after farmer talking about, well, we're price takers, we're price takers, we're price takers. So I guess I'm trying to sort of weave together the fact that, so I got very involved in policy and forming a Farm to School network and Farm to School legislation for the state, and that led me into sort of regional development for the national network. And I think that a lot of the network development is reflective now in the food policy work group that meets monthly in Maine to sort of just check in on different advocacy, a lot of the ones that Juana mentioned. And I think there's an ideal of, can we come to sort of a collective food system policy platform that provides antidote to the race to the bottom. And so working at CEI, I'll just talk a little bit about what we're doing. We work in sectors like childcare and farming and fishing and aquaculture, basically those sectors that are really, really important and essential, and the market doesn't work, and they are crushed by the race to the bottom. So we provide business expertise and financing options to support critical businesses and infrastructure in these sectors. And when I've sort of zigzagged back and forth between different kinds of business development and direct service as a community navigator in our area as well. And when I came back so I left CEI, I worked for the legislature, I worked for a community resource council in our area, and then when I went back to CEI about 7 years ago, I was asked to look at what we were doing with ag and what the needs were in ag and food systems. And at that point, I crossed paths with Heather and a group that did a project called the Maine Ag Needs Project. And just as the businesses that we were working with and the business advisors and the lenders in the finance department at CEI would tell me, I would say, what do we need? What do farmers need? What do the businesses need? And everybody was really talking about, we need access to capital. We need access to capital, we need access to technical assistance, and we need capital that's flexible, affordable, and patient. So I started looking around and found some other states that were doing something interesting to basically support producers all along the value chain and to tighten the links between businesses across the value chain to basically support a local, state, and regional food system that would be an alternative comprised of small and medium-sized businesses as opposed to combat the consolidation and the concentration in industry that Don mentioned and that Bill was talking about. So a couple of us looked at bringing a fund that Massachusetts and Vermont have to Maine and examining what the gaps were in financing and how we could find that kind of capital and promote state investment in agriculture in Maine. We have, a group of us have basically worked on the Maine Ag, Food, and Forest Products Investment Fund to support infrastructure and investment in critical businesses in the value chain and to provide the technical assistance that's really specific to businesses at whatever stage they're at. And so we're currently in the 132nd legislature, and their legislatures are a 2-year cycle. So 6 years ago, we started in the 129th, and we put a bill in to study the need for the state to support agriculture in Maine in a different way. And in the next legislature, in the 130th, the bill passed, and in the following session, it got $500,000. And so there are 2 bills. We're now in the 132nd, and we're going to go into the second session in January. And so if all of you are engaging in democracy in Maine, there are a couple of bills out there, including one of them is Representative Pluker's, and one of them is Representative Hepler's, and then there's actually 2 of them are Representative Pluker's. One of them is a bond bill, and the other is a bill to increase the corporate income tax in Maine, and that would help capitalize this fund that would support farmers and food producers. There is also another bond bill. So basically, the goal for the next legislature, for those of us working in the food system, is to get a bond bill to voters next year. So there are 2 in the legislature in the appropriations committee, and we're hoping to get those heard and voted by and passed by the full legislature to give Maine voters a chance to support multiple other funds, but this fund included. This is an essential fund to help combat this race to the bottom that Bill and Don and Juan have talked about so eloquently. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's a great kind of bringing it all the way back around. We have time for a few questions, and I thought I'll start with one, but if there are questions from the audience, people can raise their hand and we'll try to get those in. How much time do we have to work with? Another
half an hour.
the full half hour. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I guess I'd like to start with Bill, Representative Pluker. Maybe you could build a little bit on what Amy was talking about with this work on the bond potential, but also other policy initiatives that really have been in the works or have actually been implemented to help us shift away from this race to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what we are expected to engage in as farmers is a commodity system, right? So that it takes when you're selling into a commodity market, it means that as a farmer, you're just accepting the price. You're the price taker, not the price maker. And to move out of that system into an independent system where you're an independent farmer selling a product that has a different sort of market for it means that now you begin having the chance to create your own price for the markets that you're working to create. So many organic producers here, you'll see, you're selling to the CSA, you're selling to the farmer's market, and your return per item sold is so much higher when you're working in that kind of system than in a commodity system. And so creating an opportunity for farmers to create that kind of market, a different kind of market, gives them more power to create a different kind of product. And so the key to that in Maine, to such a high degree, is creating a processing infrastructure for Mainers. We're really good at getting the product out of the ground, but because of the fact that we are up here almost on a peninsula compared to the rest of the country, we have to pay more for all our inputs. We have to pay more for every time we're sending a product back into the American market, right? So we need to be able to do the processing, add value to the products that we're taking out of the ground, create our own market regionally for those products, and then that is going to give us a chance to really do something for ourselves, for the farmer, for the folks who work on the farms, for our animals, that creates a healthier system. It basically creates an economic backbone to us being able to control a lot more of what we're doing. So that's why the bond is so important, is because getting those dollars, we need tens of millions of dollars to put into infrastructure. The farmers of Maine are thirsty for that infrastructure, thirsty for that opportunity. We've had some federal money come into the state. It was very much oversubscribed. We didn't have enough money for all the demand from farmers who really want to build this market. And so we have multiple opportunities coming in the coming legislature, and looking forward to supporting them.
Great, thank you, Bill. Shifting a little bit, I was thinking, Dawn, when you were talking about the research that you did over the weekend when you went to you sort of did the assessment of the egg prices and the availability and trying to puzzle out where it all came from. It's very interesting, and it's very, just thinking about, in the bigger markets, that's what that data is coming from. You spent so many years working with farmers on the ground around the state. What about the smaller farmers who are producing eggs or who are producing chickens? What is it, from your perspective, that's going to be most helpful for them? Because they're not the ones who are selling the eggs for $3.17 a dozen. Right? They need to get they need to cover the true costs. But what is it that these livestock farmers need most to help them from a technical assistance?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can produce eggs in Maine without any interference from the state or federal government. If you produce, I think it's up to 3,000 a week or something like that. So it's a pretty high bar to have to come under any government oversight. So for small farmers, you can sell your eggs, almost anywhere now without any interference. Is that going to be profitable? I had chickens for years, and I never found that I made any money on it. I mean, it cost me more to have chickens, really, than it did, what I got out of it. Although I loved having the eggs. One thing that we do have in Maine over the past, I would say 20, 25 years, is we've lost a lot of commercial dairy farms. When I started with the state in 1986, we had around 900 to 1,000 commercial dairy farms. And I went to, over the course of 26 years, I probably went to well over half of them to work on milk quality and issues related to mastitis and so forth. Right now, we have 132 farms, 132 commercial dairy farms. One thing that's kind of striking is that even as we lost farms, cow numbers and production stayed relatively stable. But one thing that happened was that we had I supervised the dairy inspection program for many years, and one thing that happened was we had a tremendous growth in licensed cheese producers. So we started, when I started with the state in the mid-'80s, there was almost nobody. There were a couple people producing cheese, goat's milk cheese mostly. By the time I retired in 2012, we probably had 80 to 100 licensed cheese producers, and we allow raw milk sales, which is a whole other topic. I think I spoke on that here about 10 years ago, but we allow raw milk sales, so that allows farmers to, sell an unpasteurized product directly to consumers. And as I said, eggs, it's pretty free market as far as eggs, as long as you don't exceed a certain level, which is a very high level. So, but I think just to conclude, what I wanted to say too is that you can source product from ethically produced product. I mean, cage-free eggs is one way to do it. Buy cage-free eggs, and even if you don't really look at the certification organization that much, you're buying a product where chickens have a better life. It's a little bit harder to do with milk, pork, and beef. But if you investigate a little bit, you can. And certainly doing it locally from producers who raise pork, beef, and milk locally is possible in Maine because of the growth of small-scale farming.
Thank you so much, Don. And Juana, Mano and Mano, you have done just such tremendous work, and all the programs that you described are so important, and all the successes you've had are so inspiring with, providing support for farm workers and migrant farm workers across the state. I'm wondering if you could talk about, from your perspective in your community and in the perspective that you have about farm workers generally, what are the most important, from a policy perspective, what are the most important things that we could be addressing in the legislature? We work together on farm worker minimum wage. We've had a baby step forward that's going to be going into effect. What's next? What is the most important thing to really support the farm worker community that works so hard to put food on our tables?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. I think what I see is that we primarily work with farm workers who are here, migrant workers. So I think it's a different community from just farm workers in Maine, where we have migrant farm workers who are pretty much crossing state lines, crossing across the state to come and do migrant work, which is coming to do when the harvest is ready. They come harvest the crop and leave, harvest another crop in another state, leave. So I think there's a need to understand and educate that a little bit in the state of Maine around how many migrant seasonal farm workers come to the state of Maine to do that for different crops, not just blueberries. We have broccoli, we have potatoes, we have apples, we have even migrant farm workers who are coming to work in the dairy industry as well. So I think that's another piece around understanding that those are different communities in the state of Maine. We have the farm workers who have been here, who have families who have been working in the farm, who now they're working on the farm. But then we also have the families who are coming in seasonally and doing that migrant work. It is just part of the stream of the work that they do. So I think continuing to really understand that and to really understand like what is a policy that like affects them as well. And I think we, like you mentioned, we took a step around like just the state of Maine recognizing farm workers as workers and looking at like what is that cost in the real roots of like what is it costing us to get cheap eggs in the market or to get cheap blueberries in the market. Like how much is like the folks who are actually harvesting those blueberries are getting paid for that. And one of the things is that like if we look at that, like my family, like I mentioned, came here now over 25 years ago, and farm workers who are harvesting blueberries are still getting paid pretty close to the same amount per box that they were 25 years ago, where I think that's, we can see that like disproportionately of like what is it costing it to get to the store, and what is it costing people to like actually do the work. So I think that would be my response, like as what we do next.
Thank you, Amy. Amy, are there other action items that you could share with the audience about, the next steps with the potential bond initiatives?
Yeah, let's see. Well, certainly the food policy work group calls are open to everybody, and you can get updated by the emails that we send out. So talk to me, you can get on the list. But the next real steps are there will be work sessions in the Appropriations Committee, and I think encouraging and talking to the Appropriations Committee, talking to your legislator to encourage them to schedule those work sessions to support the bond, to get it to the full legislature to vote, and then there'll be a campaign to encourage Maine voters to look at the economic benefits of passing that bond. As far as the infrastructure investment fund, there is rulemaking that is going to happen. So the department has set up an advisory board that is comprised of representatives from across the supply chain, and the statute requires that there's diverse business owners included, so that it's representative of all of Maine, and that body has been meeting monthly. A very dynamic person has been hired to coordinate the fund at the Department of Agriculture, and the team from Vermont's fund has been hired to consult and help the advisory board and the departments of Ag and Economic and Community Development to set up the fund. So those are public meetings if folks are interested in paying attention and in providing input on how that fund would be most helpful to farmers and food producers, and to creating a resilient supply chain, and creating an alternative to the race to the bottom. Thank you so much, Amy, and everybody. Are there any questions from the audience?
Not
Yes.
really a question, but a comment. Bonding contributes to race to the bottom. Interest groups of all sorts like bonding. That's where they think they can get money. But bonding, government debt, is a wealth transfer from the basic middle-income people to those on top. Whenever you bond something, you are essentially feeding wealth to those on the top of the economic pyramid in the United States. Interest, paying that interest. So it's not the thing to do, because you are racing to the bottom by bonding. As soon as you bond something, you may get a third less of what you want by bonding it. Depends on the interest rate and the time period, but bonding is racing to the bottom. It's transferring wealth to the wealthy, and please just don't do it.
I appreciate that perspective, and I'll look more carefully into it. What's your take on increasing the corporate income tax?
Oh, it should be like under the Eisenhower administration.
Well,
At least 25%. Progressive income tax used to be 90% in this country under Eisenhower, and we need to bring that back.
Well, there are action steps too to encourage Representative Pluker's bill that does that to capitalize agriculture to pass. That's been carried over as well. So that passed the legislature and it's being held correct. So reach out to your legislature to encourage them to have the administration let that pass.
What you really need is to set income taxes to have a sovereign wealth fund and use that sovereign wealth fund for investment in what you want.
Yeah, I would like to talk to you more.
Thank you for that. Is there anything more you want to say about the bill that you had that's been carried over? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the opportunity with the way the bill is written is that it would increase the taxes, the income tax on S corps, which is a type of corporation, on their annual income over $3.5 million. So it does not increase taxes on the first $3.5 million you make, which so leaves out a lot of the smaller S corps that are in the state of Maine. But it would raise $50 million annually that would go to farming programs. And so this bond that we're talking about is about $40 million one time. So this would be $50 million annually, ongoing. That would come, mostly a lot of that money would come from large out-of-state corporations. So we're talking about some of the big food companies, Walmart, Tractor Supply, places like that. I think it's an amazing opportunity. We did have bipartisan support out of the Maine State House, which is a really rare thing to see bipartisan support on a tax increase, but we weren't able to get it through the executive branch. So we'll keep working on it.
Any other questions from the audience?
I'm just curious, are there other states that have had a successful bond?
The question was, are there other states that have had a successful bond program?
I would have to look into that. I don't actually have an answer for that right now. I remember there have been a few put forward. I don't know what happened with them. So yeah.
And yeah, I also don't know about other states, but what Maine has done for a long time is we've funded our Land for Maine's Future program through bonding, but we've never, which goes to set farmland aside for future, not just farmland, but all sorts of different land for conservation projects. But what this would be for the first time is that it goes into infrastructure directly to the farm businesses and agricultural businesses that need it. So helping the ones that are existing move to the next level. So it's a little bit of a different opportunity there.
There's another bill that's being held that we're hoping as a pathway to become law that would enable the Maine State Treasurer to invest directly CDFIs, and that would then lower the cost of capital for the businesses that we invest in. So that would have a lot of opportunity in the sector too.
Yes, go ahead, please.
26 years ago, Maine increased tobacco taxes to create the Healthy Maine Partnerships. Even though the legislature, takes money and puts it in the general fund, but all that money was dedicated to improve the health of older people, rural people, people with mental health issues, and with one voice, people came together and said, this is what we want to do. Is there any plausibility anywhere, because I actually don't know the answer to this, for raising some sort of sugar tax for a healthy farm partnership?
I mean, that has been talked about in the past. Yes, we have circled back to it. When we last looked at it, it was like 15 years ago, and there wasn't any appetite sort of where we were as a state to do that.
Yeah, I think food taxes are hard, politically, even when it is sugar, and we know that it's has poor health outcomes for us. It's still difficult to go back to food especially if it's a sales tax of some sort, which tends to, as we were talking about before, not take money from the higher income folks. It takes money from the lower income folks. But yeah, some sort of targeted tax on unhealthy food, perhaps, but yeah.
Yeah, we have a working group that is really researching, looking currently at other policy mechanisms to generate revenue for agriculture, and hoping that we can identify something that is both politically feasible and impactful economically that we can bring forward. Hopefully with Representative Pluker's help.
And one thing our Attorney General has done when we're looking more broadly at like how do we recoup some of the money that the state is spending to support our farmers, particularly around PFAS. We've got a $60 million fund that's been put together to support farmers. On top of that, there's another $40 million being spent directly by the department. So the Attorney General has filed a class action suit against the manufacturers of PFAS, very clearly saying it's not just hurt us as farmers, it's hurt all of the public water supply systems that now have to filter for that to try to get the PFAS out of the system, trying to protect our waterways. It's a real issue. So that's another potential source of income is looking at some of these class action suits against those who have really done us so much harm.
Great. Well, I think we're getting close to needing to wrap up, but I just want to thank our wonderful panelists today for this discussion. This is ongoing. Yes, thank you all so much. It's really meaningful to work with all of you, and I'm looking forward to the next legislative session and the opportunities that we have to work with our members of Congress as well to try to keep Maine is a model, really, is in our food and organic agriculture programs, and it's largely because of all of us working together, and I hope we can continue that. Are there any final words anyone would like to say before we break? Thank you so much. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
maybe the farm workers need a strike to get higher wages.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, it is.
Yes.